Embroidery Editing Essentials Part 4, Creating a Custom Merge Job. One of my absolute favorite design series that Christy has created for the Itch to Stitch is our Baby's First Holiday Designs. We have one for every major holiday. We also did a couple different birthday designs. We received some requests for first circus, first beach trip, first trip to the zoo. We continue to get requests for custom designs. And while we wish we could meet every request, the reality is we just cannot entertain every possible suggestion. The best thing about having embroidery software, though, is you can create something custom yourself. For example, what if my little friend Ruby is really into lions and she wants a lion first birthday? Let me show you how I created this custom design by picking apart a few of our designs. Let's start by opening that first zoo lion design. I want this to be in my 5x7 hoop because Ruby is a 1-year-old. I'm going to try to stick to my 5x7 hoop on her little 12-month shirt. And I want an oriented portrait. The first thing I need to get rid of is the word zoo trip. So when I expand this object panel, I can see each of the individual color stops. And I can select one of those color stops. So this one, it has 3 of the letters since they're alternating colors. And if I just hit the delete key on my keyboard, I can easily delete a color stop. It's just that simple. Let me undo that. If I select more than one color stop, so if I want all 3 of those to be deleted at the same time, I can hold my shift key as I click from the top one to the bottom one. That will select all 3 of those color stops, and I can do edit, delete, or just hit the delete key on my keyboard and they're gone. Now I need to make this a birthday design. So I'm going to borrow some elements from the first birthday kitty. And I'm going to use the merge feature to do that. That's something we haven't looked at yet. If I click this merge a stitch file button, I get a dialog box that pops up that allows me to navigate through my folders, and I have all these designs clustered together in one folder here to help me find what I want to use for this. And there she is, first birthday kitty. So once I have it selected, then I click import and it brings it centered in the hoop. I'm going to just scoot her off to the side and I'm going to use this slider bar to see what I'm doing a little bit better. The first thing I want to do is borrow the word birthday. So in my object panel, if I click the triangle to minimize the lion and instead expand the kitty, I will see that the word birthday is down here in the last 3 color stops. So again, if I hold my shift key, I can select all 3 of those layers. I can come up here and do a copy and then paste. Now we didn't really see anything change on my screen, and that's because when you paste an item, it lands right on top of where it was originally. But if I scroll up here and collapse my kitty design, we'll see I have a third object and it is just the word birthday. So now that I have it selected, I can drag it over here. The next thing I want to borrow from this kitty is her party hat. So let me expand this design again. Her party hat is an applique design. So if I select I'm going to hold down my command key. On Windows, you'd hold down your control key to select multiple steps. I need the placement and tack down stitches, and then later in the design are the satin stitches in the ball. So once I have all 4 of those designs selected, and I can double check if I come down here on the bottom toolbar, it tells me I've got 4 color stops selected. I can copy and paste. Now let's collapse this, and there's my 4th object, the extra party hat. I can drag it over here and place it on my lion. At this point, I'm done with the kitty cat, but before I dismiss her, let's just examine the difference between these 2 designs real quick. Can you see the difference? It's around the party hat. All right. The kitty cat was custom digitized so that there's no overlapping fabric and there's no overlapping designs. Let's go back to this, and if I were to select those 4 steps again and hide them from view, so if I click this white lock that hides them, you can see that I would not be able to skip the hat on this design because my poor kitty would have a hole in her head. This is the mark of a well-digitized design because It's not going to have overlap fabrics or overlap satin stitches. Now, when you're creating your own merge job, that's when things can get a little bit more tricky. So over here, if we look at my lion, I'm going to have to do a little bit of work to make this stitch a little bit neater. All right, so let's say goodbye to our kitty. We just are going to delete her by hitting the delete key. And now let's come back over here. Let me get this centered back. Let's work on positioning this hat exactly the way I want. So I want to zoom in. Now when I zoom in, the object I want to work on, the area, is off my screen. So I can use this little navigation tool here. Click on this compass, and this little box pops up, and I can, if I click right where I want to focus my attention, that will become centered. So that's a nice little feature to quickly jump to a new part of the design when you are zoomed in. When I select my hat, I can rotate this and position it exactly where I want. Now my goal is for the satin stitches of the hat to sit just on top of the satin stitches of his head, and since I'm in ghost mode, I'm kind of having a hard time seeing that. So let's uncheck ghost mode. Now I can see where the design is, and I want to rotate it and get these points of the orange hat to just touch perfectly the satin stitches of the head, and then centered between the ears. So see, I've got it touching right there and right there. I think I like that position a lot. When we are using Essentials, we have at our disposal a feature to remove overlap stitches. So when you have two different objects on your workspace that are overlapped, when you go to Preferences under When Saving, if you have this box checked, Remove Overlaps when saving stitch files, it will automatically happen when you save. Okay, the stitches aren't actually deleted here in our working file, but they will be deleted when the stitch file is saved. We can get a little preview of that by clicking this scissors button. Okay, so this gives us a preview of the Remove Hidden Stitches. Did you see anything change? I didn't see anything change. That's because it's removing the stitches that are under stitches. If we go back to Stitches in 3D, now if I zoom in just a little bit there on that hat, you can tell that, hey, it did remove the overlap stitches in both the brown step and here in the light brown step. All right, but what I really want to get rid of is the bulky stitches here. Now, granted, if I were to go ahead and save this as is and take it to my embroidery machine, I want to go back to, I would be tacking down fabric, and so those would be covered, but it's still going to be bulky. The fantastic feature that Essentials has is that you can actually remove overlap stitches from applique designs as well. Because if you look back up here under the preferences, there is also this box that you can check that says treat objects labeled as applique position as fill. All right, what that means is I can come over here to my design, and for the applique steps, if you left click a color, you get to choose a different color from the thread catalog. But if you right click, you can assign these steps of an applique design with some special information. So for the placement stitches that come first, you want to say, hey, this is going to be applique position. And then for the next step, we right click and choose applique material. So this is telling Embrilliance that these steps are special. They determine the position and when the material is tacked down at the machine. Right click, applique material. So I've done that for all three of these: position material, position material, position material. I also need to come down here and do it for the hat too. So let me expand this, and this one is applique position, and this one is applique material. So now Embrilliance knows, hey, fabric is going to fill this spot. So now when I click my preview button for Remove Hidden Stitches, not only is Embrilliance going to remove the stitches that are overlapped, but it's also going to remove the stitches that would be covered by fabric. Isn't that a neat feature? Those stitches haven't technically been deleted yet from my working file. So for example, if I wanted to move this party hat and try it in a new position, it doesn't leave a hole in this head. When I let go and position this somewhere else, You'll see those stitches fill back in, so I can maybe rotate it. Let's say I wanted to cover his ear. I may put it there. That might look kind of silly. But now if I hit the Remove Hidden Stitches preview button, we'll see what satin stitches will be removed from that step. As I continue editing, you may see those removed hidden stitches pop back up, and that's okay. What's important is at the very end, we'll preview it again, and then the stitches will be permanently removed from the saved stitch file. Okay, I'm going to undo this move because I had already perfectly placed it. To prevent me from accidentally moving my perfectly placed hat again, I'm going to use a feature called Group. First, let me rearrange the stitch order here. I typically like all my text to be at the end, so I'm going to right-click the object that is the word birthday and move it last. Now, holding my Shift key, I'm going to select both the lion and the hat and go up to Edit, Group, and what it will do is lock those in place with each other. Let me use my little navigation tool here to go back to viewing my entire hoop. Now if I grab my lion, the hat comes with it. So I'm not going to accidentally separate them since I've done all my special placement. Now I keep calling this lion a he, but I really want it to be a she. I want it to be for my friend Ruby. Most of our first holiday designs were created to be gender neutral, and you make them girly by your fabric and thread choices. However, there are a couple designs that we do specifically have a boy and girl version of. I'm going to borrow the eyelashes off of the first New Year's girl. Now I'm going to show you another way of copying and pasting parts from a design. Let's just open her up in her own tab here. So we need the first New Year's girl. All right, let's expand her. And what I want to do is borrow her eyes. And her eyes are in two steps. The black part of the eyes with the eyelashes is here, and the white dots is in this step. So again, if I hold my Shift key while I select both of those, I can copy those two elements from this design, then come back over here to my first zoo and paste them in place. And so now I've got this set of eyes, and I can drag and drop it on top. If I were to save this design right now, it would stitch two sets of eyes, and we don't want that to happen. So let's delete the eyes from the original lion. All right, we know we don't need the white of the eyes, so I can delete that. And we don't want the black of the eyes either, so we delete that, and oops, what happened? Let's undo that. We lost the nose and mouth because they are joined in the same color stop as the eyes. So we can't just simply delete the color stop. But we're not out of luck. There is a way that we can separate the eyes, and that is by using Stitch Simulator. Okay, so what we can do is run Stitch Simulator through here. Let's get to the eyes. Let's see what happens. I'm going to hit play here so we can watch it. It's going to do the mouth, and then it's going to do the nose, and then it jumps to the eyes. So what we need to do is find the exact point where it jumps from one to the other, and we can do that by using the arrow keys and forward advance one stitch. So it's going to finish off the underlay. Let's go a little bit farther on the nose. Now it's doing the satin stitches. It's going to tie off and jump to the eye. All right, so let's go back and find that point right where it jumps. It jumps right there. I'm going to add a color stop. That's what that red stop sign means. Insert a color stop. Okay, so originally everything was black. The part that was there first, the mouth and nose, is going to stay black. What I'm doing is choosing a thread color for the rest of that stop. It doesn't matter what we're going to choose. Let's just give him some orange eyes. Okay, so now if we look at the object panel here for the lion, we'll see that we've got the black nose and mouth, and now his eyes are orange. It's a separate color stop, so now I can delete that. All right, let's exit Stitch Simulator. And let's drag these eyes. Let's see, now that those other eyes are gone, I'm going to scoot it just a little bit up and out. Now I want this to be positioned where the other eyes were. So I can drag and drop this. See how there's a blue line right there in between those two steps? I can drop it right there. And so now it will do the nose and mouth and then the eyes, just like it did previously, except these include eyelashes. The last thing we need to do is personalize it. Right, so I'm going to create a lettering object, and type rubies. We do sell the font that coordinates with all of our first holiday designs, and it is named Tuesday. All right, I don't know which size I need, so let's just start with the 0.6 inch. It's a little bit more than ½ inch size. Okay, that is a little bit too small for this, so I'm going to scoot that over here real quick. And I'm just going to copy and paste this lettering object, since I've already typed Ruby, and let's see what the next size of the design is. It's 1 inch, and 1 inch is going to end up being too big to fill this space. Okay, so here is a common question that we receive. Is it better to enlarge a small font, or is it better to reduce a large font? It's hard to give an answer because it varies. It depends on the situation. So let me talk you through how I decided what to do for this shirt. In both cases, I resized it to fill the space and then examine the percent change. So if we look over here, when I started with the 0.6 inch size, I need to resize it to 133. Okay, so that's a 33% change. What happens with the 1 inch size if I resize it down to fit in that same space? I resized to 86%. So that's what? About a 13-14% change versus a 33% change. I personally tend to prefer the smallest amount of change possible. Let me also show you another thing that I would do. I'm going to scoot these up next to the T. I'm going to turn off draw stitches in 3D and kind of zoom in here. Let me bring that center stage. All right, and let's compare them. If you look at the R's, they look very different because one of them is expanding stitches and one of them is reducing stitches. And if I compare it to the ST that's going to be right next to, this one is going to have wider satin stitches and it's not nearly as dense as this one, which is going to be a little bit more comparable in width and density. So that's how I would decide in this particular case to take the larger size and reduce it down. So I'm going to delete the one I don't want. And let's navigate back to the center of my hoop. Actually, let's just zoom to hoop. We will turn stitches in 3D back on and put Ruby up here. Because of this party hat and because I'm choosing to force myself to stay in the 5x7 hoop, Ruby is a little bit off center and it's all right, but I think to make it look a little bit more purposeful, I'm actually going to curve that text a little bit. So I'm going to select this text on circle box over here and change my radius a little bit, decrease the space between my letters, rotate the whole thing ever so slightly. And once I get it just about perfect, I can move individual letters if need be. So I might scoot this U out and scoot the Y in and maybe scoot the apostrophe and the S just a little bit. And I think curving it gives it a little bit more interest and makes it look purposeful, that it's not quite centered because of that party hat. Let's now look at stitch order and colors. All right, so we've got the lion applique plus the eyes. I really want the party hat to come next, so I'm going to move that earlier. And then for text, I usually like it to stitch from top to bottom. So let's move Ruby earlier and move that later. So it goes rubies and then the ST and then birthday. And now let's work on colors. So for the one, I'd like that to maybe be pink. And again, if I've got palette selected, I can make sure that I'm choosing the same pink that goes everywhere. Maybe I want the ST to be green. All right, now for rubies, if I select the word and change the color, I could change it to one of these colors, maybe orange, and that would be fine. But really, I would kind of like it to alternate, like the word birthday. And I can do that by selecting just the letter inside the R, or when I have just the R selected. So see how there's a box around the R? Now when I click the color tab, it will change just that one letter. So maybe R-U, let's change the B to pink and the Y to green. And maybe make the apostrophe pink. All right, so here's what we've done. We have added the word birthday. We have borrowed the party hat. We have borrowed eyes with eyelashes. We've added Ruby's name. We've recolored it. We've reordered everything. Let's preview the remove hidden stitches, so we'll see what that looks like when we sew it out. I think I'm about done here. If I look down at the very bottom, it tells me that I'm going to have 27 color changes, okay? That's because of the way my text is organized. Ruby, the way her name is typed right now, has 6 color stops. It means my machine is going to stop for a thread change as it stitches from left to right. And then I've got all the color stops in the word birthday as well. I can choose to color sort this design before saving. So under Utilities, I can go to Color Sort. It thinks for a moment, and then it tells me that the design page has been reduced by 9 color changes. I could choose to save it as is. If I just want to trust that Embrilliance did its thing and save it and go straight to my machine, I can do that. But I personally like to double check everything, so I'm going to open up New View. Let's quickly examine the difference between those two things. Right here, this is my working file, and this is where I still have things separated out. I have 6 different objects listed. In this new color sorted file that I opened, it's all been joined together as one object, and it only has 17 color stops instead. If I expand this, I can examine how it color sorted. All right, I've got my placement and tack down stitches at the beginning, and then I've got the satin stitches. And in this step, oh, let's go back to ghost mode. All right, so we'll see this is missing stitches here. The main is missing those stitches there. When it did the satin stitches around the 1, it also joined with this color step. It brought these up to this point, the B and the apostrophe and the letters and birthday. And we've got the arms. Notice that the eyes and mouth were joined in the same color stop, and then the white of the eyes is its own. Then we've got the party hat placement tack down. When it did the satin stitches for the hat, it brought up to that same stop the lettering that's also in orange. We've got this one color stop, the dot on the hat, and then all the green text at the end. Why was this pink not brought up at the same time and stitched here? All right. You may think, hey, I want to do that to save myself a thread change. Well, what happens if I were to drag that to right there? It's not going to look good because the satin stitches will come later and be on top of the dot. So Embrilliance has an intelligent color sort. It's going to know, I know you want to save thread changes, but really it's important that that one stays put. So let me undo that change. The other thing you want to examine before you officially save and take to your machine are the placement and tack down stitches for applique, because those are important. And in this case, it did a little bit of reordering that I want to fix. So it's got the placement for the main and then the placement for the 1. And that's not what I want. I want that main tack down stitch to come next. So placement and tack down for the main, placement and tack down for the 1, and then placement and tack down for the lion fabric. All right, at this point now, I could save this as my merged file. So File, Save As. In this case, it's just a stitch file. So let's save the stitch file, and we'll name it Ruby Lion. And it's a PES file, and save. Let's watch this in Stitch Simulator just for kicks to see how it goes. And I'm just going to drag it across. We've got the placement and tack down, placement and tack down. Then we've got that satin, and we can watch it jump across there. So we'll have some jumps to trim. So the fabric stayed in place, but the satin stitches were removed. All right, so let's go back here real quick. That's one thing I didn't mention before. When Embrilliance does remove the hidden stitches from appliques, it does not change the placement and tack down stitches for the fabric. That would require redrawing lines, and that is a digitizing feature that is not included in Essentials. But what it can do is delete the bulk of the satin stitches that would be underneath it. So those are gone. And now we can watch it finish off the rest of the design. And there it is. All right, so we saved Ruby Lion. Now let's save our working file. Okay, I'm going to close both of these and show you the difference and why it's important to save both. Let's say at Ruby's birthday party, Julia's mom falls in love with her shirt and wants one just like it. If you had only saved the stitch file, let's go and open up that stitch file. You're going to have a very hard time deleting Ruby's name because those letters are in the midst of other color stops. So the B and the apostrophe are here. You're not going to be able to delete that because it's connected in the same color stop as the satin stitches for everything else. In fact, the only way to do it is to run it through Stitch Simulator, and you'd have to do that for every single letter of Ruby's name. That's going to be very complicated. However, if you open up the working file, the .be, then we'll see that we still have everything, all the elements separated. It even tells you where it came from. We see it, this was from the first Zoo line. We see these eyes came from the first New Year's girl. But on the lettering object, we can type a new name. So I can type Julia and hit enter. And now it changes for Julia. I may have to recolor her name, so maybe I'll make this orange and make this green. Make this pink, whatever I need to do to make it work for a name that has a different number of letters. But saving the BE file allows me to redo the name. And I can do hit the remove hidden stitches button to get a preview of that. What if Julia's mom doesn't want it to have a party hat? Well, I could ungroup that hat and then delete the hat, and all the satin stitches for the original lion are still intact because the working file remembers what the original design was. So those hidden stitches weren't actually removed from the working file. They're only removed when you save a stitch file. And so that is another one of the perks of saving the working file. This project has showed off so many of my favorite features of Embrilliance software. There are so many possibilities when you use editing software. For example, in this particular Big Sister shirt, I took 2 sizes of the same duck. I borrowed eyelashes from a princess, I borrowed a bow from the ant, and I added text using our Closer to Free font. For this birthday shirt for my niece, I used the football too, but I deleted the white elements from it. I used this sweet little fishing puppy, but I deleted his fishing pole. I borrowed the party hat from the dinosaur box, and I borrowed one of the hearts off of the love bug cheeks in order to put a little heart on the dog collar, and then I added her name with Twinkle Star. There's just so many customizing options when you use Embrilliance Essentials. Thank you for watching. Please check out our other videos for more helpful tips.